guys, I'm Ray Belli, and this is Words for Granted, a podcast that looks at how words change over time. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible, the world's leading provider of expertly performed audiobooks. Audible has over 180,000 titles that you can listen to anytime, anywhere. If you like reading fiction, Audible has a book for you. If you like reading science, Audible has a book for you too. If you like reading poetry, politics, or anything at all, Audible has a book for you. If you sign up at audibletrial.com/wordsforgranted, you'll get 1 month free, and not only that, but you'll be supporting the show. Everybody wins. You can find a link to the trial right in the show notes for today's episode, and I hope you sign up today. Before we begin, I'd like to add a quick and minor correction to the episode on the topic of Beg the Question. I said that beg the question is a translation of the Latin phrase petito principi, and that's almost correct. It's actually petitio principi. Note the missing I in my original pronunciation. Thanks to Dana for pointing that one out to me. Okay, so let's get on to the show. So, I have a question for you guys. How many of you are left-handed? Actually, I already know the answer to this. Statistically, it's about 10% of you. So, let me ask another related question. How many of you are evil? Wait, evil? What does being evil have to do with being left-handed? Well, at face value, not very much. So, let me reword the question, this time with a little more semantic precision. How many of you guys are sinister? Still don't see the connection I'm trying to make here? The modern English word sinister, which means evil, ominous, or ill-willed, is ultimately derived from the Latin word sinister, which, in addition to meaning evil, ominous, and ill-willed, also meant left, as in left-handed. But today's episode is about more than just the etymological connection between left and sinister. It's about the negative bias against the left and left-handedness expressed by languages around the world. Consider this very brief list of examples to see what I mean. In Sanskrit, the word for left is wama, which also means wicked. In Russian, the word for left is levyi, which also means unofficial or counterfeit. In Hungarian, the word for left is bal, which also means bad. In Mandarin, the word for left is zuo, which also means immoral or improper. In German and Dutch, the word for left is links, and it's closely related to the word for cunning or risky. And here's the most extreme of them all. In Turkish, the word for left is sol, and it means discoloration, illness, or death. The general theme among these words is clear. Languages negatively discriminate against the left. As we work our way through today's discussion, I'd like you to keep in mind that the etymology of sinister is just one entry point into this massive topic. Though the development of sinister is the focal point of our discussion, we'll be analyzing it in the context of the bigger picture of left discrimination. Oh, and one more thing before we get started. The left, as it relates to the political spectrum, has nothing to do with this etymological history. The ideological values attributed to the political left and right can be traced back to the French Revolution. At the French National Assembly of 1789, the progressives gathered on the left side of the room, and the conservatives gathered on the right. That's it. So, if you happen to be inclined to draw a connection between the etymological discriminations against the left that we're going to discuss today and your own personal discriminations against the political left, well, you can count it as null and void. Okay, with those things out of the way, let's start unpacking this word. Beyond Latin, the ultimate etymology of sinister is unknown. One theory suggests that it shares an Indo-European root word with sanayan, a Sanskrit word meaning more useful. At first glance, this seems counterintuitive. For most people, the left hand is less useful than the right, so if left was one of the main senses of the Latin word sinister, how does this theoretical etymology make sense? Well, the Romans superstitiously believed that the left side was unlucky, and according to the Sanian theory, sinister originally would have been used as an ironic euphemism to avoid invoking the bad luck associated with the left side. This may sound like a totally crackpot theory, but believe it or not, other languages have invented words for left based on this same superstitious euphemism. For instance, aristeros, the modern Greek word for left, derives from the ancient Greek word aristos, which meant best, even though, like the ancient Romans, the ancient Greeks also believed that the left side was unlucky. This belief is reflected in another Greek word for left. Euemos literally meant of good name, and, like aristeros, it was an ironic, superstitious euphemism. If you think it's strange that the ancient Greeks had 2 words for left, well, the ancient Romans had 3. In addition to sinister, Latin had laevus and scaevus. The words laevus and scaevus both meant left, and they also both meant awkward or unlucky. Although scaevus was the more superstitious of the two, both words could be used interchangeably. The thing that makes laevus and scaevus different from sinister is that both words had these negative connotations from the start. Sinister, on the other hand, seems to have acquired its negative connotation a little later on. This chronology lends itself to another theory concerning the ultimate etymology of sinister, but in order to understand it, you need to know a little bit about how the ancient Romans felt about birds. Yes, birds. There was a common type of priest in ancient Rome called an augur, and augurs interpreted the will of the gods based on the flight patterns of birds. If the birds flew one way, it was considered a good omen, and if the birds flew the other way, it was considered a bad omen. An augur's interpretation of flight patterns was called taking auspices, and, not too surprisingly, augur and the modern English word auspicious are cognates. While taking auspices, Roman augurs originally faced southward, so their left hands, or their sinistre, faced eastward. This is significant because the east was considered to be the luckiest of the sky's 4 quadrants. But hold on a second. Why would these augurs align their unlucky hand with the luckiest quadrant of the sky? Your guess is as good as mine. It's a glaring cultural contradiction that, as far as I can tell, is unaccounted for. The only thing we can deduce is that on a day-to-day basis, common Romans regarded the left hand with superstitious dread and stigma, but while taking auspices, augurs not only disregarded this superstition, but also venerated the status of the left hand. In the pre-classical era, sinister is used in the context of augury to indicate good omens. With that in mind, consider this second theory on the etymology of sinister. Sinister was borrowed into Latin from a foreign language whose origin is no longer known to us in order to give augurs a neutral term for referring to the left. See, while scaevus and laevus, the native Latin words for left, were tainted by superstition, a newly introduced word would have provided a linguistically clean slate with no negative connotation. But if the augurs had to adopt a foreign word in order to cleanse their left hands of superstition, why didn't they just turn around so their right hands face the east? Well, I can't tell you why they didn't do that from the start, but eventually, that is what they did. Sometime between the 1st century BCE and the 2nd century CE, Roman augurs began imitating the Greek augurs who, instead of facing the south while taking auspices, faced the north. Not only did this reverse the orientation of their right and left hands, but it also reversed the superstition surrounding them. Now, Roman augurs began associating bad luck with the left hand, thus giving sinister its unlucky or ill-fated sense. We can point to this as the definitive moment at which the familiar sense of our English word sinister, meaning evil, ominous, ill-willed, etc., begins to emerge. But before Sinister was inherited by English, it was inherited by the Romance languages. So for the next part of our discussion, I'd like to take a quick look at how Sinister evolved in Italian, Spanish, and French. This may seem like a digression because it is, but I think it adds a worthwhile subplot to today's overall story, especially for those of you who may speak any of these languages. The most semantically conservative of Sinister's Roman derivatives is the modern Italian word sinistra. Like its Latin forebearer, sinistra means both left and evil, unlucky, or ominous. Now, I'm not exactly sure about this, but I suspect that this semantic conservatism has something to do with Italian speakers' geographical and cultural proximity to Rome itself. Because Sinister's dual meanings go back to the Roman augurs, their ancient superstitions may have been preserved by word of mouth for many generations, even after the Roman Empire collapsed and its rituals began fading away. However, for the people living in the regions that would become Spain and France, geographically and culturally removed from Rome, the derivatives of the word sinister began to diverge. Siniestro, the Spanish derivative of sinister, once shared its Latin forebearer's dual meaning as well, but today its left sense has mostly fallen out of usage. Today, siniestro basically means the same thing as the English word sinister. Izquierdo, a Basque loanword, is the standard word for left in the modern Spanish-speaking world, but in a very small way, the left sense of siniestro has in fact survived. You can find it in the old idiomatic expression a diestra e siniestra, which means something like to do something with both right and left hands. Diestra, I should note, means right in Spanish. French originally inherited the dual sense of sinister as well, but this dual sense eventually gave way to two separate words in Middle French, sinistre and sinestre. Linguists refer to this kind of etymological inheritance as a doublet. The sinister sense of the word was inherited by sinistre, and the left sense of the word was inherited by sinestre. Sinistre has survived into modern French with its sinister meaning intact. When used as a noun, it also can refer to a disaster, an accident, or a catastrophe. However, sinestre fell out of usage during the 16th century and was replaced by the word gauche. Though it's not burdened with the same unlucky superstition as sinister, gauche is still a pejorative word in its own right. Gauche literally means awkward or ungraceful, and when English borrowed it as a loanword during the 18th century, it directly inherited this meaning. While Spanish took izquierdo from a foreign language, French borrowed gauche from French itself. Gauche ultimately derives from the verb gaucher, which meant to walk clumsily in Old French. Believe it or not, gaucher is actually cognate with the modern English verb to walk. So, why exactly did the left sense of sinister's French and Spanish derivatives die out? This isn't exactly documented, but my guess is that the negative connotation of the word linked to evil and misfortune became so extreme that it no longer seemed appropriate to indicate left by the same word. That's not to say that the left, particularly the left hand, was vindicated of negativity in these cultures altogether. To this day, the Catholic Church regards the left hand with superstition, and, as we've already seen, the etymology of the French word gauche is pejorative. The neutrality of the Spanish word izquierdo is a surprising exception to the linguistic bias we've been exploring. Okay, I hope you found some of that stuff interesting. Now, let's finally turn our attention to the development of sinister in English. Sinister came into English via French in the wake of the Norman French invasion of England. It was originally pronounced sinistre, but by the time of early modern English, the word had been anglicized as sinister. The modern pronunciation of the word sinister, with the short I sound in the middle, did not come about until approximately the 18th century. Today, like siniestro and sinistre, the meaning of sinister is limited to evil, ominous, or ill-willed. But Because of the historical moment at which the word was absorbed into English, early English usages of sinister occasionally retain the original dual sense of its French and Latin predecessors. Through the time of Shakespeare, sinister could be used as a synonym for left. In All's Well That Ends Well, Shakespeare himself writes, quote, "An emblem of war here on his sinister cheek," end quote. The sinister cheek of which he speaks is the left cheek. It may surprise you, but if we look in the right places, we can find traces of the left sense of sinister still lingering in English today too. Shakespeare's use of the word emblem provides us with a clue where to look. Do you guys know what heraldry is? Heraldry is a broad term used to describe the stylized emblems and badges first utilized by medieval knights and soldiers. Consequently, much of the technical lingo surrounding heraldic symbols, such as coats of arms, echoes the language of an older time. From the point of view of its bearer, the left side of the shield in a coat of arms is called the sinister side, and a stripe that runs diagonally upwards from the bottom left of the shield is called a bend sinister. In heraldry, a bend is merely the word for a stripe. Typically, a bend sinister was administered as a mark of an illegitimate birth. In the 18th century, Scottish writer Sir Walter Scott playfully invented the term bar sinister, a bilingual pun on the French name for a bend sinister. Bar sinister subsequently became a general term indicating a bastard or illegitimate child. Simon Bar Sinister is the name of the antagonist in the 1960s cartoon Underdog, though the original meaning of Bar Sinister doesn't really apply to the character. Simon Bar Sinister is merely the bad guy, which may indicate that the show's creators took the sinister in Bar Sinister simply to mean, well, sinister as we know it. Another remnant of the left sense of sinister can be found in the word ambisinistruous. If you've never heard of this word, don't feel too badly. Neither had I until researching this episode. Ambisinistruous is the opposite of ambidextrous. Based on its Latin roots ambi, meaning both, and dexter, meaning right, ambidextrous literally means to have two right hands, and ambisinistruous, you guessed it, means to have two left hands. An insult to lefties around the world, the rare modern English word ambisinistruous means someone who is uncoordinated or clumsy with their hands. Not only is ambisinistruous an insult to lefties, but ambidexterity is an unspoken veneration of righties. This dichotomy really represents two sides of the same coin. We could have approached today's overall theme from the right point of view and analyzed the linguistic bias in favor of right-handedness. Certainly, it's no coincidence that right is both the word for our right hand and a synonym for correct. If you'd like me to explore this linguistic bias from the right side, shoot me an email at wordsforgranted@gmail.com and let me know. If I get enough positive feedback from you, I'll get working on that soon. Now, at this point in the episode, a lot of you are probably wondering, where did the word left come from? Left comes from an Old English root word, but before English used the word left in its modern sense, it used the word venistre. Venistre was a word of Anglo-Saxon origin that literally meant friendlier. It follows the same superstitious euphemistic construction of the Greek words aristeros and euonymos, which, if you recall, meant best and of good name, respectively. Again, the idea was to give the left hand a positive name to avoid invoking the bad luck superstitiously associated with it. The word left is first attested in the 13th century, and it's derived from another native Anglo-Saxon word, lieft, which meant weak or foolish. Though you may be inclined to make a connection between left and the past participle of leave because getting left behind can be a sign of weakness, these words come from different roots and their similarity is a coincidence. This demonstrates that Even though our modern word left no longer has a negative connotation, it originally had a negative dual meaning like so many other words for left from around the world. To wrap things up, I briefly would like to address where some of these negative biases come from. As I'm sure most of you already have assumed, the linguistic bias against left-handedness is, at its core, a matter of statistics. Nearly 90% of the human race is right-handed. In the ancient world, long before the advent of modern science, the righty majority perceived the lefty minority with superstition simply because this minority was different. But even as these ancient superstitions began fading away, words for left still retained a negative connotation because lefties were, and still are, the minority, and words for the left are perceived through the semantic lens of right-handed dominance. If lefties made up the majority of the human race, then presumably this semantic lens would be turned the other way around. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow Words for Granted on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you know someone who might enjoy the podcast, please let them know about it. If you yourself enjoy the show, leave a positive review on iTunes. It's not because I want you to tell me how great I am, it's because that's the way that random new people on the internet find out about the show, and I want to keep this awesome community growing. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me at wordsforgranted@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show directly, you can always do so via Patreon. Patreon is a free crowdfunding service that allows independent creators to get their work out into the world. You can head over to my website, wordsforgranted.com, to find out more. After we reach the first $100 mark, I'll be posting exclusive content available only to contributors. I'd like to thank listener Bonnie for her recent contribution. Okay. See you next time here at Words for Granted.